Most people think that earning respect means explaining themselves in detail. They believe that if they talk long enough, justify enough, or prove enough, others will finally understand them and treat them the right way. But in reality, the opposite usually happens. The moment you start over-explaining, you begin to lose power, not occasionally, not only with difficult people, but almost every time. Over-explaining isn't a sign of strength or clarity. More often, it quietly weakens your authority. Nearly everyone has walked away from a conversation wishing they had said less. They replay it in their mind, realizing they didn't just share information, they surrendered influence. There's that subtle feeling of losing ground, of having revealed too much, defended too intensely, or tried too hard to be understood. Here's the psychological truth most people overlook. The individuals who are taken most seriously are rarely the ones who speak the most. They are the ones who speak briefly, speak clearly, and stand firm in their reality. Power doesn't come from constant transparency. It comes from being intentional with your words and consistent in your self-respect. When you understand this, you'll notice a shift in how others respond to you. Your no will feel final. People will think twice before testing your boundaries. Fewer individuals will assume they deserve your time, your explanations, or your energy. And just as importantly, you'll stop feeling obligated to manage how others react to your choices. The final point in this video is where the real shift in power truly begins. The moment you stop asking for permission to live your own life and start living it with quiet confidence, everything changes. Today, we're talking about 5 things you should never feel obligated to explain about yourself. Let's start with the first. 1. Stop explaining your no. Most people automatically over-justify when they refuse something. A friend invites you out, you're exhausted. You'd rather stay home. Instead of simply saying, "No, I'm staying in tonight," most people begin building a long explanation. They talk about how draining their week has been, how early they need to wake up, how tired they feel, how they wish they could come but just can't. They assume that the more reasons they give, the more their decision will be understood and respected. But psychologically, this often backfires. A no packed with reasons opens the door to negotiation. A simple no earns respect. The moment you offer multiple explanations, you unintentionally give the other person points to challenge. Each reason becomes something they can try to fix, debate, or work around. However, when your refusal is brief, calm, and firm, no over-explaining, no emotional performance, you close the door in a polite yet decisive way. You're not being harsh, you're being clear. And clarity is powerful. It communicates that your decision comes from within and isn't up for debate. You're not asking for approval, you're simply stating a reality about your own life, and people instinctively sense that finality. They stop viewing you as someone who can be convinced and begin seeing you as someone with firm priorities. Over time, this alone shifts how they deal with you. They test your boundaries less, they value your time more, and they recognize that when you speak, you mean it. 2. Stop explaining your tastes and preferences. When someone questions what you enjoy, your music, your movies, your style, your hobbies, your interests, the usual reaction is to defend it. People rush to explain why their taste is meaningful, why it has depth, why it's actually refined, why others just don't understand it. They turn something personal into something that needs to be justified. This exposes a subtle but powerful psychological pattern. The moment you defend what you love, you frame it as something that requires approval. But your personal taste isn't a problem to solve, it's a reflection of who you are. You don't walk into a museum and see a painting with a long argument attached, trying to prove why its colors are acceptable. It simply exists as an expression. In the same way, what you enjoy doesn't need to be defended. It speaks for itself. It simply exists. You don't see self-assured people apologizing for what they enjoy. They mention their interests naturally and continue the conversation. When you stop defending your preferences and just own them, you take away the critic's leverage. Why does this work? Because silence around your taste signals confidence. You're not looking for permission. You're presenting your choices as something obvious and settled. That quiet certainty carries more weight than any long explanation ever could. It makes your preferences feel stable instead of insecure. People don't stop challenging you because they suddenly agree. They stop because they sense that your identity isn't open for negotiation. 3. Stop explaining your time and your busyness. When someone replies late or arrives behind schedule, the instinct is often to give a full breakdown of the day. They mention errands, surprise tasks, traffic, meetings, interruptions, technical issues, almost apologizing for having responsibilities. They assume that if they provide enough context, they'll be seen as accountable rather than careless. But over-explaining your time subtly reduces its value. Look at how highly respected professionals operate. Doctors, executives, and highly sought-after sought-after individuals don't provide detailed justifications for every delay. Their time is presumed to matter, so people accept it without questioning. In contrast, when you constantly explain your availability, you unintentionally suggest that your time is open for debate, as if everyone deserves a detailed summary of your schedule. Instead of defending your busyness, those who are respected simply reconnect. They respond when they can, they show up when they're available, and they move forward without turning their time into something that needs to be defended. They acknowledge, adjust, and continue without turning it into a performance. Why does this work? Because when you stop defending your availability, you communicate that your time holds value by default. People begin to see your attention as something to appreciate, not something they're automatically entitled to. They question your response time less and value your presence more. And when you do show up, your quietness about your schedule carries a subtle authority. 4. Stop explaining your life choices. Many people feel enormous pressure to justify big decisions: their career, their relationships, their lifestyle, where they live, or how they choose to spend their money. They provide long, rational explanations, financial details, and future projections, as if observers are owed a full presentation. It's like acting as the CEO of your own life while delivering a quarterly report to shareholders who never invested. But this often signals doubt rather than confidence. The truth is straightforward. You are not obligated to justify your path to anyone who didn't help you build it. You don't owe acquaintances, distant relatives, or outside observers a detailed breakdown of your decisions. Your life is not a public proposal awaiting approval. It's a personal direction that only you are responsible for steering. A short, confident response shuts down intrusive questions far more effectively than a long defense ever could. Why does this work? Because over-explaining your life decisions sends a subtle signal of hesitation, even if you're completely sure. A calm, brief statement communicates certainty, and certainty naturally discourages interrogation. Doubt invites more questions. Confidence closes the conversation. When people sense that you're genuinely at peace with your choices, they lose the impulse to challenge them. Your clarity itself becomes a psychological boundary. 5. Stop explaining your boundaries. This is the real turning point. When people set boundaries, their first instinct is often to justify them with backstory, past experiences, emotional wounds, personal struggles. They believe that if others fully understand their pain, they'll finally respect the limit. But in reality, this often weakens the boundary instead of strengthening it. A boundary supported by emotional explanation can start to feel negotiable. Boundaries aren't therapy sessions, they are terms of engagement. Strong individuals express their limits clearly and calmly without building an emotional courtroom around them. The moment you attach your boundary to a personal wound, you hand others material to question, downplay, or argue against. A boundary does not need a story to be valid. It only needs to be stated and upheld. But when you express a boundary in a calm, direct way without attaching a long explanation, you signal that it isn't open for negotiation. Why does this work? And this is the most important idea in this entire video. When a boundary is delivered without justification, it is received as a condition, not a request. That shift alone changes everything. It accomplishes two powerful things at the same time. First, it filters out those who don't respect you. They either adjust their behavior or naturally distance themselves. Second, it teaches everyone else to handle you with more awareness because they recognize that your limits aren't emotional impulses, they are steady standards. At this point, something fundamental changes in how people perceive you. You are no longer someone they can pressure, test, or subtly manipulate. You become someone who understands their limits and consistently upholds them. And here's what happens when you practice even one of these principles regularly. People test you less. They take what you say more seriously. They pause before assuming access to your time, your explanations, or your energy. Power doesn't increase when you explain yourself more. It increases when you explain yourself less and stand confidently behind the decisions you make. This week, choose just one of these 5. State your stance clearly and then let the silence remain without rushing to justify it. In the beginning, it might feel uncomfortable, but that discomfort doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It simply means old conditioning is being challenged. You've been taught to over-explain, to apologize, to manage how others feel. Releasing that habit feels unfamiliar at first. With time, though, you'll notice something deeper changing. People will start responding to you differently, not because you argued more convincingly, but because your presence reflects clarity and self-respect. You stop appearing as someone who needs to be convinced. You start showing up as someone who knows exactly who they are, and that quiet certainty is what truly earns respect. If this resonated with you, consider this question. Which of these 5 are you already applying, and which one are you committing to begin this week? Share the number in the comments, because real authority doesn't start with a loud confrontation. It begins with one decision you make and choose not to explain. If you enjoyed this video, please like my channel, Mr. Shawnee Psych, and share your thoughts in the comments about what you liked. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll do my best to reply as quickly as I can.